What's up, my fellow fantasy nerds? Today, at long last, the wheel of time has turned, and an age has come and passed. For episode 65 of Inking Out Loud, we've finally arrived at the last episode of our review of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. For A Memory of Light Part 3, we've had a few special things planned for today, and unfortunately we weren't, of course, able to pull all of it together due to this whole worldwide pandemic being a thing. But as it is, we've still saved some of our best segment ideas for today's episode, and it's sure to be one hell of a ride. I'm your host, Rob Santos, and I'm joined, as I always am, by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody?
And seeing us off on our journey to the Grey Havens, standing on what I'm sure is a tearful shore, is none other than our sound engineer, Mr. Patrick McCaffrey. Pat, what's up, dude?
Buckle up, motherfuckers.
Oh, we're going to have so much fun. Drew, just do your Drew. Just do your thing. Tell us how the greatest fantasy epic of our time has ended.
So it's funny because like synopsizing this is actually like super short and sweet.
Yep.
From where we left off at the end of chapter 37, the forces of the light rally at Marilor. The Shanchan return to the battlefield. The dragons are fixed and rejoin the fray. Maggedion tries to impersonate Demandred, and it doesn't really work that well. And she ends up getting collared by the Shanchan. The Horn of Valir is sounded. The heroes show up, fight for the light. At Shale Ghul, Perrin kills Slayer and Langfear. Rand tricks Moradin. Moradin takes up Kalendor as a true power of Sa'angreal, and then it has his flow stolen by Nynaeve and Warrain via the Flaw, and then they link with Rand, and he uses all three powers to imprison the Dark One once again. Mat kills Padan Fain after proving immune to Mashadar, and in the end, Rand and Moradin swap bodies. Moradin dies in Rand's. Rand goes off to live a life in Moradin's. And that is the end of the Wheel of Time.
That's it. That's everything.
Shut up, you're crying. I'm not crying.
Manly tears were shed this day. Yeah, no, listen. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, so while that was, a little synopsis of the book, I want to start off with an anecdote.
Oh.
And we originally wanted to have all of the principal parties in this story present today, but because of the pandemic, we weren't able to organize it. However, we have two of them, Pat and myself, and we want to talk a little bit about the release of this book. And Pat and I, along with two of our friends, Nick and Colin, drove to Provo, Utah, back in January of 2013 to go to the midnight release party of this.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a story attached to it, which apparently I found out recently ended up in the BYU newspaper.
Oh?
What? Wait.
Yeah.
Wait, I made the newspaper?
So apparently...
Pat, you
yeah.
specifically made the newspaper.
Items of interest from the campus police. And...
I need to read this article.
I need to read this article. Christ.
Yeah. Maybe later this year, if I'm back out there for the Rhythm of War release, I'll go to BYU and get a copy of the newspaper while I'm at the library to also hopefully read Dragonsteel Prime. But, the gist of it was, midnight release, we get the books at midnight, and then there's a signing line. All the books were pre-signed, but if you wanted to get it personalized and ask Brandon questions, you could get in line, and we did that. Mm-hmm. And we waited in line for probably another hour and a half or 2 hours.
Right. But we had the book.
Yes. So we were reading in line, of course.
Yeah, right.
And, we all four of us finally got our books signed, and we went outside. This was at the BYU bookstore on the BYU campus. And earlier that day, we had stopped by a liquor store. They had a humidor, and we bought some cigars to smoke and celebrate. Perfectly legal. We were all of age.
Nice.
And it is worth mentioning at this point that Pat was there in cosplay.
Yes, so if there's plenty of footage out there from like the midnight release pictures and even like plenty of video, if you notice a tallish fellow with a black coat on and a mohawk, you're looking at me.
And a mohawk.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Pat was a high-blood Ashaman.
Exactly. Yeah.
What
that
the
was my
hell?
fantasy. It's like, yeah, I'm one of Shan Shan Highblood who discovered he could channel and rolls up to the Black Tower in the Fourth Age.
So anyway, we're outside. It's like whatever, January 8th, 2013, Provo, Utah. It was freezing cold.
Oh.
So we were smoking our cigars outside the bookstore and decided, you know what, it's a little too cold to be out here. We're going to head back to the car, and we're going to chill in the car and read and finish our cigars before we go back to the hotel.
As you do.
And Pat had split off for a little bit. I don't remember why. You like went for a little walk around the building or something. And then we all, I think you went to go find a bathroom.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's logical. I have a bladder the size of a gumball, so
Yeah.
it's not.
I feel you there.
But yeah, so we went back to the car, and it was Pat's car, Colorado license plates, and we're sitting in the car, smoking our cigars and reading. And the next thing we know, there are about 8 cop cars boxing us in.
Uh-oh. Oh, I knew where this was going. I knew it. Okay.
And of course, this is January 2013, and in Colorado, November 2012, marijuana was legalized. So these cops thought they were getting the score of their lives.
It had
That
just been.
They just caught a bunch of Colorado idiots smoking dope in their car
Yeah.
on BYU campus, which we were not.
And they are just the kind of people who
That's
would refer
exactly-
to them as dope.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's exactly who
And
you want to be caught.
You know,
Bunch
the
of-
cops roll up and they're like, you know, what are you guys doing
targets.
here? Asking us questions like, what are you smoking? We're like, oh, just some cigars. And they're like, we're going to need to see those. And
Yeah, he like didn't believe us. Like he's never
And
seen
what-
weed before in his life.
What if you had
And-
smoked them all already, you had none left? How would you prove it? Just on the smell?
I mean, they wouldn't have had any proof to arrest us anyway,
Well,
if it was already gone. But no, we all had them. But the cop was like, you know, do you have anything in your car you're not supposed to? And we're like, no, sir. And he's like, maybe something that's okay where you're from, but it's not okay here. And we're like, we know what you're getting
Yeah, it's
at.
like-
Yeah.
No, we don't have marijuana.
This is not my third birthday, actually.
And he's like, so you would, if we asked to search your car, you'd be
That
fine with
sucks.
that? And we're like, yes, we don't have marijuana, dude.
Yeah.
We're smoking cigars. You can see our IDs. We're all of age. Like, and they're like, so what are you doing here? And we're like, oh, we're here for the book release. And he's like, you're telling me you drove from Colorado to go to a book release? And
We're
we're like,
hell yeah. That
yeah,
is
you see
exactly
these
what we're
crowds of
telling you.
people walking by, all carrying the same book that we're all reading right now.
Right.
Yes, we came for the
Yeah.
book release. Like,
You think I dress like this all the time?
oh,
Damn.
But so we're pretty sure that somebody must have seen Pat wandering when he was
Yeah.
going to the bathroom. We're like, oh, somebody skulking in a trench coat.
oh, that's
And then-
right. He had the mohawk, too. Oh, Pat, that didn't do you any favors, man.
Yeah, no, that is the wrong place in the world to go if you want understanding and acceptance of maybe an alternative lifestyle.
Right.
Oh, my
Literally
goodness.
on the BYU campus.
Right.
Is there a
Like,
worse place to be
somehow-
caught with marijuana? Besides maybe
And
the
he
White
had
House?
us Keep the windows
No, the
down
White House,
in
it's
our
legal
car.
in
It
D.C.
was
What am I saying?
Freezing.
Yeah.
It was terrible. And this was like 45 minutes of harassment
Oh, yeah.
while we just want to read.
And I was like, at a certain point, I was like, I've had enough of this, and I just like relit my cigar and went back to reading while they were dealing with the cops.
Oh, that's
still.
a ballsy move there, my
Yeah, no,
friend.
you, Colin, and Nick.
See,
were
I
all
couldn't
like,
do that.
Yeah, this is on you, Pat. You're in
I,
the driver's
as
seat.
a professed pot smoker who would not ever bring anything or smoke anything down there, I could not do that. I wouldn't have even be able to do what you did there, Drew, and keep smoking the cigar. I'd be a foreigner. I'd be in a lot of danger. I'd be like, not me. Drew lights up that cigar, I'm walking away from it. Damn.
Oh,
That's
no,
ballsy.
yeah,
That's
there was
funny, though.
absolutely nothing that we did wrong, but it was just a series of hilarious coincidences.
damn.
And yeah, I just found out recently that was in the BYU.
Oh,
newspaper.
how was
I
that
had
phrased
two
then?
different people, two different friends who went to BYU corroborate and be like, oh, I remember that. Like,
So what did the paper say? Some shaved head, trench coat, pot smoking hippie? Smoking hippie?
I don't know. I really want to see what the article says.
I'm really curious now, too.
No one could ever.
No, not hippie.
No, but it was the pot smoking. Yeah, it was the pot smoking that I figured.
I'm the guy who chainsaws the trees that the hippies are tied to.
Yeah, it was like I'm guessing somebody was like call of suspicious person on campus. Officers briefly detained suspect due to suspicion of drug use. No arrests were made or something like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, like I said, unfortunately, we don't have the whole group, but at least Pat and I, are on to...
Right, we're here.
Yeah.
To reminisce a little bit. Wow. 7 years ago. Oh...
That must have been a fun.
Man.
Oh, that would have been scary at the time.
It was still a great night.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely incredible. That release party was a heck of a lot of fun, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully the Rhythm of War party will release. Will go ahead as planned in November, and I'll be able to go out for to see the what kind of a monster that has evolved into, because I was at the Starsight party this past November, and that was bigger than the Memory of Light party.
Really?
And they're expecting the Rhythm of War release to be twice the size of the Starsight release. They're expecting like over 5,000 people to show up to that thing.
Damn.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess the Oathbringer one was over 3,000, and just based on like how the release parties, like the Starsight party was as big as the Oathbringer party. It sold out the venue, and they have to get a bigger venue for Rhythm of War. Like,
it's not the book that sold it out; it was Brandon Sanderson at that point. Like that's unbelievable. I mean, no, I would say unbelievable, but no, that's absolutely and totally believable. Surprising, but believable. So, anyway, shall we charge forth into our style discussion? I don't have a lot of style to discuss, but I have some few things.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so as what I'm sure is no surprise to anybody at this point, Brandon, in my opinion, had some of the greatest prose of his entire career in the final third of this book. I don't have a ton to say about his style because we've said so much already up until now, comparing and contrasting him with Jordan himself. But I want to say, first off, Chapter 39, Those Who Fight. I believe that one's called Those Who Fight, yeah. This one moved me in a lot of ways. Like, we have not just beauty, we have majesty in both imagery and in word choice. We have Rand walked through eons and ages, his hands passing through ribbons of the pattern's light. These scenes in the Dark One's prison must have been, interesting and challenging for anybody to approach. But Sanderson went and nailed it. It's a shame that we didn't get to see this particular scene from Jordan's own pen. I'm sure everybody agrees with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Although, what?
But you're right. He nailed it. And there's one specific passage that is famous now from this chapter.
Oh?
Where Rand says, "It has never been about me." And it says, "It was about a woman torn and beaten down, cast from her throne and made a puppet. It was about a man that love repeatedly forsook. It was about a woman with a secret, a hope for the, and it has this litany. And I think one of the best moves the Watt on Prime TV show ever did was using these quotes when announcing the principal characters, the casting for the principal characters.
They use these exact quotes. I'm just finding this out now.
Yeah.
No wonder they rang familiar.
When they had the Egwene casting announcement,
right.
On the tweet, there was a quote. It was about a woman who would not bend her back while she was beaten and who shone with the light for all who watched. And when they announced Nynaeve, it was about a woman who refused to believe that she could not help, could not heal those who had been harmed. And for Matt, it was about a hero who insisted with every breath that he was anything but a hero. This is so good.
Yeah.
It really speaks to how good it is that it makes me feel something for the first time about characters that I've never given a crap about up to this point. And Morgaze.
Morgaze was an odd one. I wasn't expecting.
Is it about Morgaze, really?
And
I was caught up in it.
And
I welcome Tom.
Tom was
Egwene.
Yeah, like so it starts. It goes Morghese, then Tom, then Warrain, then Perrin, then Nynaeve, then Matt, then Egwene, and then it was about them all.
Perrin's got me too. A man who stood tall in his sorrow and protected those he could. I was just like, oh my god. That hit home. That brought me right back to the Shadow Rising Part 2 or Part 3 when I was just hurting for Perrin so bad. You know?
Yeah.
You know, I'll say this. This is a scene that somebody with the talent of Brandon Sanderson was born to write. He was born to write those pages. I can't imagine how it would have been different from Jordan's own pen. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of half expecting for you to correct me, Drew, and say, well, actually, no, Jordan wrote this one too. Because I've been hearing that about so many scenes that I've been unprepared to hear that about. I was like, uh-oh. But...
I believe this is Brandon Sanderson.
Oh, yeah, it's got
I
his
have never heard
fingerprints
anything...
everywhere.
As far as I know, all of this stuff at the end of the book, but before the epilogue, was Brandon.
Yeah. Now, on the subject of typical Sanderson fashion, though, something that just screams Brandon Sanderson, for me, while we're still in our style discussion point here, we gained a lot more momentum after we hit, in my opinion, one particular line. And for me, that was the line where Rand finally lets go of the list. He is screaming and he's being flayed by the Dark One. And in that scream, he lets go. And to me, it gives the impression of, like, cresting, obviously, as the metaphor has been put forth by Rand al'Thor before this, with the last battle as a whole. It felt like cresting the top of a very steep hill. And the first step you go down the other side is slow. And the second step comes faster. And then our Sanderson avalanche is off. It's made all the more exciting, of course, with the context in mind of every single reader at this point. And... this is the end. Forward for the light. It all starts here. And goosebumps. Goosebumps.
Yeah. One thing that has, stood out to me on this read through, that feels very Sanderson, and it's something we've talked about on previous episodes, but on an even more micro scale now, is the staccato lines and sentences, line breaks. How as the events of this book ramped up and we had this insane chapter, everything from the end of the last battle, chapter 37, to the end of this book is short, fast. It's no longer this exhausting marathon of a reading experience. These chapters, some of these chapters are a page, 2 pages long, and within the chapters, the sentences are short. The paragraphs are short. Paragraphs at a certain point rarely end up longer than a couple of lines or a couple of sentences. It's very choppy, but because of that, it moves fast, and there's this frenetic feeling to it that helps drive that momentum, that as if the whole last battle was this buildup of pressure, and then land killing Demandred releases that pressure, and then this is the rush after it.
Yeah.
This is the flood that follows. Yes.
From a chapter structure down to a sentence structure point, everything about the writing in what we read for today helps intimate that rush, that forceful release that we're getting after the last battle.
Yeah.
And things are wrapping up very quickly. Like it's a very cinematic experience.
Absolutely. And then
on all the different fronts, the good guys are in dire straits, and then the one thing, in this case, land killing Demandred. Like everything starts to turn around. They get the horn and everything, and they start to win.
Yeah, that's the turning point.
Yep.
And on a lighter note of style, there's one particular Matt line, and we've had our criticisms about Sanderson's Matt humor before, but better late than never. Because if this line was written by Sanderson, he finally got it. It's very close to the end. And I'm paraphrasing, but as Matt thinks about the Heroes of the Horn, and someone was berating him, and he goes, even dead women bullied him like an enemy. Yes, that.
That's it.
That's Matt. That's Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So good on him there.
I definitely, that definitely stood out to me. I noticed it in that moment, and just the same way you did. I laughed out loud, and I was like, yes, that's what I've been waiting to hear right there. So well done.
It makes me think it was written by Jordan, but you know.
Never know.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that was Sanderson. As far as I know, the only Matt in this book that Robert Jordan wrote was the one little bit in the epilogue, and that was not in the epilogue, the scene you're talking about.
That makes sense.
So,
Yeah, no.
But I very much agree. That is the Matt that we know and love from Robert Jordan's books, where he has this sarcastically put upon mentality, you know, where like there's a little bit of an awareness of like, of course I'm getting berated, but there's also like a poking fun at himself, a self-deprecating humor to it, where he's like,
of course,
yeah.
Natural. What else would happen under these circumstances?
So, well, that wraps up everything I had to say about style, and I will is there anything else that you guys have to say about style before we go into characters?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, man.
And this is not about Brandon Sanderson's style. This is Robert Jordan's style.
Ah, okay.
And this is... Okay. It has become a trendy thing in a lot of discussion circles to kind of dump on Robert Jordan's prose. Oh, he's too detailed. Oh, he doesn't have the lyricism. He doesn't have the poetic kind of
trendy
prose. You know.
Yeah, I hate that it is, but
and maybe there's a little bit of justification in that. You know, I'm not gonna claim he's Guy Gavriel Kay or Gene Wolfe or Kai Ashante Wilson or someone like that, but when he put his mind to it, Robert Jordan can move a reader. Mm-hmm. We talked about it back in The Shadow Rising. We talked about it in The Path of Daggers with Fedwin Moore and with Joan and Adley, and some of those scenes with Eben Hopwell at the end of Winter's Heart. You know, like he has the ability to move a reader. And the very end of this book is simple in execution, but gorgeous. The final 2 paragraphs.
Yes.
The wind blew southward through knotted forests, over shimmering plains, and toward lands unexplored. This wind, it was not the ending. There are no endings, and never will be endings, to the turning of the wheel of time. But it was an ending.
Yeah, another moment that I predicted correctly and perfectly. I need to brag about that real quick before we continue. No big deal or anything, but in the days, or maybe it was weeks before release, I don't know if you remember, Drew, but I made a post in the large Facebook Wheel of Time group. And I predicted that the last words of A Memory of Light were going to be, there are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the Wheel of Time, but it was an ending. I mean, probably not too hard to guess in retrospect, but in the moment I still felt pretty good about myself when I came to that line. I was like,
how perfect is it?
It was
yes,
it was
bookends
the way to
so
end
perfect.
that book.
There was no other way you could end the series.
Absolutely.
Like, I still think the end of Soldiers Live by Glenn Cook is the most perfect ending to a series I've ever read. But this is not far behind. These final lines are like just there literally is no better way it could have been concluded.
And they lived happily ever after of the Wheel of Time.
But it's so much more than that too.
Yeah.
You know, like, because it's not just and they lived happily ever after, because you know they didn't just live happily ever after.
Right.
And I think maybe this is a good transition point. We solicited some listener questions.
Really, I saved those for the end. But if you want to have one to answer, have at it.
Yeah, just because this is a good segue. The way it ended, there's a lot of controversy in the fandom where people are saying, I wanted more. I wanted to find out what's happening after. I wanted a 19 years later type chapter.
Oh, come on.
You know,
don't bring Rowling into
got
this.
that in Towers at Midnight.
I hope we didn't. Everybody hopes we didn't.
It was conclusively proven that her
Yeah.
her visions are not going to come to pass.
Because of Ruark, right?
Yeah, because of Ruark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My dude.
And
my
she's
dude.
gonna
I
name
actually
one of her
have
children
him
something
called
different,
my
but-
dude in my notes later here too.
Yeah. Yeah. R.I.P. buddy.
Best
yeah.
Aiel.
But
Best idea.
I never personally felt the need for that. Yeah, it would have been cool to get the Outrigger trilogy with Matt and Tuon. But
Was that an honest plan? Did Jordan actually still insist that he was going to write those eventually? Or was that
Yeah,
still
oh, yeah.
something that he was just like vaguely thinking about and letting people know that he was considering? He was.
no, he was going to write it. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, he had two things planned to write. He had the prequels, the Tam prequel, and then the second Moiraine and
Oh, I
Land
would have
prequel,
loved that.
and
Tam
then
prequel.
the Outriggers with Matt and Tuon and Min reconsolidating Shan-Chan. Although he hadn't started working much on it, there's, as far as I know, he left behind just like a few lines that he had started writing of Matt like dicing in an alley in Ebu Dar. And that was just the start of it.
Perfect.
But
Sounds like a perfect start to
Yeah.
a Robert Jordan book.
and then he was also going to write a new series called Infinity of Heaven.
I love the idea
like-
of that.
As much as I understand the desire to want more, I don't want more from this book. Like, it ended where it needed to end, and if it dragged on more, that just would have been gratuitous.
I agree. I think had this epilogue been like, whatever, chapter 50,
Yeah.
and there was a 19 years later style epilogue after it, that would have undercut the power of the closing lines, for one thing. And I also feel like it would have undermined the themes that he built up throughout 14 books in the series. It is such a constant in the Wheel of Time that you're never going to get all the answers. And wrapping it up in a bow would have felt disingenuous to the previous 4.2 million words, I think.
What? Sorry.
Yeah.
Remind me again which exact question we're answering right now, or was this just was it?
There was... I don't remember the...
Because I have all the
name on
questions
it.
here. This is one of the ones that was posted on the Inking Out Loud Facebook engagement group.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that
there
was from-
one question about...
Yeah, that was from Kyle Pollock. And he said, thoughts on fan wishes for continuing stories, i.e. Matt and the Shan-Chan. What would you guys have liked to see? That's the question we're addressing, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it would have been fun to see the Matt and Shan-Chan stories, but I don't
certainly.
think we need them. I'm not put out. I don't think we're robbed of a proper ending or anything because we didn't get it.
See-
I mean,
No,
I answered this... Sorry, go ahead.
If it's a more general question about, like, if there were more books that took place after the fact, what would I most like to see? The Matt and Nebudar stuff would be cool. Avienda learning how to time travel would be really cool.
Oh, god damn.
As far as anything like a Black Tower, White Tower relations book would be cool. And that's the only thing on Randland.
You see, I answered this
That I'm
question very
interested in.
differently because I didn't write anything about what I wanted or what I hoped Jordan actually did get around to. I just wrote a couple of things that I really wish had ended differently. I'm still going to complain that Matt ended up with Fortuona and not with Tuon. I didn't like her before the name change, but I didn't actively hate her. I wanted to see Matt ride off. See, this is what I want. I wanted to see Matt ride off with his hat and his horse into the sunset. A couple of pretty girls on his lap, laughing at him, playing with his staff, that kind of thing. Or maybe him riding off with Eludra. If you had asked me in like circa Winter's Heart when that was the new one, I feel it would feel really weird by now. But during Winter's Heart, I really shipped those two. Something fierce. I'm still indignant on the behalf of Eludra.
I will say on the like theory part of that question, I feel very strongly that I know at least the thrust of what would have happened in the Outriggers with Matt and Tuon.
Oh.
Playing with his staff thrusts? Like, come on, guys. What are we talking about? What are we doing?
So it was going to be a trilogy of Outriggers. It was going to be 3 books.
Okay.
So obviously it's not going to be tied up nice and neatly, snip, snap. But I feel very certain Min was going to end up being a major character and ending up playing a part in Tuon's court in Shanshan.
Okay,
I feel fairly certain that Moghedian would have been the principal antagonist of it, that she would have gotten out of her bondage quickly. There were so many little pieces set up to bring existing main or major characters to Shanshan after the last battle that I just cannot help but think Robert Jordan planned to include them all in the Outrigger trilogy.
That's interesting. I keep forgetting that Min was still
Rand
involved.
Rand would have maybe showed up from time to time to visit Min, but that he would largely have not been a player. I think Matt retains his Taviran nature, but he's the only one of the 3 who does. So that you can't just be like, oh, yeah, let's bring Perrin and Rand over. And
Hold on, Matt retains his Taviran nature?
Yeah.
Do we get that?
Because he's
In
got
text?
more stuff to do.
Yeah, he's got more stuff to do.
Wow. I thought all 3 of them were no longer Taviran.
No, so it's
learning
never
that now, too.
explicitly said that Matt is not.
Rand
is not, and Perrin is not.
Yeah.
But Matt is left up in the air, and I think that's, again, on
my point.
purpose. It's one of these seeds that Robert Jordan planted to set up his Outrigger trilogy.
We couldn't really have a series of Matt if he wasn't Taviran. It'd be very difficult.
It wouldn't feel like the same Matt, and
and it's not Robert Jordan's style to write the type of story where it's like he had this Taviran power and now he lost it and he has to make do without it.
Yeah.
Like, I could see Brandon Sanderson doing something like that.
Oh, yeah. Sanderson would have a field day
sure.
with that. That's some narrative ground upon which to sow some seeds.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I want to harken back to one aspect of this book and get your guys' opinion on it. Because I don't know if I'm, being too picky or whatever, but the whole concept of the last battle, upon reflection, doesn't sit well with me, given what the Dark One's actual motivation is, as it turns out. So if he wants to break the wheel, essentially, and cause a bunch of nothingness, right? That's why Moradin is his most loyal follower, his only loyal follower. If that's the idea, what on earth does it matter? What happens to why bother with armies? Why bother with it? Why not just say, okay, Demandred, get that Sangreal, start sweeping around you with Balefire, or Moradin, because Moradin would actually do it. And then the pattern is just...
Well, I don't think his goal was to wreck the pattern. His goal was to crush the hopes of men. That was ultimately his goal, more so than the nothingness, right?
Yeah, Rand comes to this realization that it's more than just nothingness. That it's actually he wants to break humanity, and the biggest part of that is that he needs to break Rand, and he because during their conversation, the Dark One promises Rand rest, and he promises him oblivion. And Rand comes to the realization.
Yeah.
And he says, "You really are nothing. You would never have given me rest as you promised, Father of Lies. You would have enslaved me as you would have enslaved the others. You cannot give oblivion. Rest is not yours, only torment." The Dark One wouldn't have...
Yeah, that was a lie.
...gone to nothingness as... And this is, I think, the great twist with Moradin's ideals, is that Moradin, Shamael, was in the end wrong. He would never have achieved oblivion. And so the only hope for peace is what he got, is that he can die and be reborn and hope and choose for a different life. And so because of that, because the Dark One needs to break Rand, in order to truly break out and enslave and torment the world, he needs Rand to see the failings of what Rand perceived as his responsibility. And it's that moment that Rob brought up in Rand's, like, shriek of torment, where he abdicates his responsibility for everybody else, and he says, like, is it me dodging my own responsibility, or is it me allowing others to carry their own responsibility? And it's at that point that the Dark One essentially lost. Because he can no longer...
That's a much better interpretation, and it brings it more into line with something like The Lord of the Rings, which also makes sense, because Sauron's goal is also just to enslave the world.
Yeah, I honestly, between all of the different realities that Rand and the Dark One were kind of throwing at each other, if the Dark One were to achieve his perfect goal, I believe that first reality would have been what the Dark One wanted.
Which
ultimately
is just,
what he would have done.
Stylistically, it's strange to me, like the way it was revealed, the way it was played out.
Surreal in like the scene itself, you mean?
Yeah, and like,
or just mean
the
as
way
the
the
author's
knowledge
choice
was revealed, I suppose.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it was a bit of a.
I don't know what the point was, but I mean, like, we probably all would have assumed from the get-go that that's what the Dark One's goal really was, and then this Oblivion concept gets introduced, only to be like, no, that's not it. Like, okay,
I like it.
Why did we need to go through that? What did we?
I guess that's
because
up for
it made you worried
interpretation.
for a second. It made you worried that you had totally misunderstood everything, and that there was a big unknown player.
No, it didn't make me.
It made me
Because
worry that.
in Eye of the World, we have these talks of breaking the wheel and slaying the great serpent, and there is at least an implication there that will just cause oblivion and end time.
Right.
Sure.
And so, I think it's more of like, instead of like twist after twist, it's from the get-go supposed to be at least a question. Is it this or that?
And then we have the cracks themselves spreading, absorbing all the light. So you have all these different pieces of the board coming together, and it looks like they're going to spell something horrible that you hadn't even prepared for. That's one thing, is that over the course of the past 14 books, obviously none of us are actually thinking, okay, it's going to end horribly, the Dark One's going to win, and we will all serve him after all. But introducing that new threat, one that we hadn't had 14 books to brace ourselves for, I think it was very, very quaint. Like, the whole idea of the nothingness showing up at the last moment, and that's exactly what Moradin / Ishamael was hoping for, and seeing all these cracks spread all over the world, and seeing people freak out, even the Forsaken start to be hesitant about it. I mean, I thought it was really effective, and I personally enjoyed it. I thought it was a really cool little bit of flavor there, apocalyptic flavor, if you will.
Okay. Well, while we're on the topic of things that maybe we're going to criticize a little more.
Okay.
I kind of alluded to this on our last episode, but I held off from really diving in because it's all the real issues that I have with it happen in this portion, and it's a book-long theme. It starts with Talmanes in the prologue, where he reaches this breaking moment as a character where he becomes the Dread Bane, where he can defeat Murdral because he doesn't have to worry about taking wounds because he is already dead. And then he is saved at the last moment and healed by Nynaeve. And then during the battle, during the last battle, Galad faces off against Demandred and is defeated and left for dead, and then he's saved at the last moment and healed. And then Lan reaches this, again, cathartic, or not even cathartic, like an apotheosis moment almost, where he comes full circle to his teachings with Rand back in the Great Hunt about sheathing the sword, and he says, sometimes sacrificing yourself is what you need to do to win. And he does that. He lets himself be run through so he can kill Demandred. And then he's saved at the last moment and healed. And then Fail sacrifices herself so that Ulver can get the horn away. And then she's saved at the last moment and healed. And it's like, it happens over and over and over again. And if it happened once, maybe twice, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But because it happens again and again and again and again, it feels like a Deus Ex Machina at that point, where it's just like, oh, we didn't want these characters to die, so we're gonna, like, we're gonna
There were the
make you think they
sacrificial-
died, and then but the one that really pisses me off is Lan, because the fact that he's saved completely undercuts the whole thematic power of him choosing to sheath the sword.
Does it? Because he was ready to die, and I thought he did. This is something I said in the last episode that Drew, you were very hesitant on letting me say fully because that last word he sent his at the end of chapter 37, the last battle. He sent to his love to Nynaeve as he did. He collapsed, but I thought for some reason I was so ready for him to die that I read died, D-I-E-D. I was like, so when he was suddenly alive later, I was like, hang on a second, what the hell just happened? And then I went back and read it, and then, oh my god, he didn't say died, it said did. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's a dumb moment to have.
That's definitely one of my biggest issues with this book.
It's a big problem.
Hold on, I'll challenge that though before you continue, because unless were you going to elaborate on that still, or were you going to change the subject?
Yeah, I'm elaborating on that still.
Okay, sorry, go on.
I'm going to say I know that in large part this is a Brandon Sanderson decision, not a Robert Jordan decision, because the Talmanes stuff was written by Brandon, and the only stuff in the epilogue that Robert Jordan did not write were the Perrin, Loyal, and Cadsuane scenes. And the Perrin scenes are where he saves Fael.
Yeah.
This was Brandon.
And hell, now that you mentioned Cadsuane, it's kind of the opposite thing. He made us think Cadsuane was dead for a split second.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't have an issue with that scene with Tom.
Yeah, it was just...
I do remember when Tom just, like, casually kills Cadsuane. I was like, what?
Wait,
yeah, I do remember being surprised there. Yeah.
I went back and reread a couple paragraphs. So like, did I miss something here? What the heck?
I did also that same reread.
Now, like, psychologically, I don't know what it says that I wish more people had really died.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. Just be consistent with it.
Oh, wait until we get later in the episode.
Like, if everyone lived, or if everyone died, or whatever, the people we thought were dead were actually dead.
Mm-hmm.
The people we thought were alive are actually alive. That's fine. But why some authors insist on doing this, pulling the rug out from under us nonsense, is beyond me. Like, it does nothing for me. Does it do anything for you guys?
No.
Okay, can I retort now?
Cool when Talmanes did. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I'm going to challenge that in that you have to consider the feasibility of letting characters die of their wounds when you have a magic system that is so capable of healing everybody and has been displayed healing everybody, and you have players walking around like Nynaeve, like Yukiri, like the male Ashamon, Damer Flynn. He was the really talented healer, right? I mean, how practically speaking, how would it have been to witness all these characters dying and for some reason not having an Aes Sedai around to offer some sort of healing? You'd have to pull a lot of strings to get those exact events to line up. It sounds like a lot of work.
Except the events were already lined up. Galad and Lan, especially, they died like deep behind enemy lines.
Yeah.
They were lying there on the ground bleeding out for a while before there was any help that got there. And with Lan specifically, he's healed by Jahar Narishma, who is never established to be a good healer before this.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely felt heavy-handed, but I didn't find anything wrong with it.
Fael pissed me off even more because that was like super like that was such a last moment thing. Like it felt out of place in the epilogue, where the epilogue was these series of very short little vignettes, and then we have like a 5-page long Perrin scene where he rescues Fael and finds her like somehow barely still alive after 3 days, buried under a pile of Trollocs
3 days
in the middle. Well, I don't know if it was 3 days, but it was a while because they were at Marilor, not at Shale Ghul.
Yeah, but Perrin traveled the world
faster
in the Wolf
out
Dream.
there.
Oh, got you. Okay, got you. Yep, you mean talk. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that one was like, there's no way she's still alive. Like, there's no way.
I will join your voice in that complaint there. In that it was done, it was pulled out from under us so late that in the penultimate Perrin chapter, I thought we had lost her, and I was like, wow, that's a really dark way to end Perrin's chapters, is to have him collapse crying over Fael. I was like, damn, okay, they really are making this so late. They are really making that impact. Okay, and then in the epilogue, it was corrected.
It's
I was
cheating.
like, what?
It's
a little
cheating.
yeah.
You want to get the emotional impact without any of the consequences.
Yeah.
And like that's what separates like certain kinds of authors.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I'm getting worked up about this. This is, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty minor complaint that I have. I think overall this book was executed very, very well. And I'm more than satisfied with how the Wheel of Time was concluded, you know, through the work of Brandon and Harriet and Team Jordan with Alan and Maria. It was overall very good, but there were missteps along the way, I think.
The only true condemnation I have of Team Jordan is Pod and Fane. That's the only true one I have, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Do we before we continue though, because I've been wondering this for about 20 or 30 minutes now. Do we not have any character discussion to have? Because I, believe it or not, was still waiting to reveal that I have nothing about any specific character to say.
So I don't really, because so much of this was around like just plot points being resolved rather than like character development. The only real like character development that there was in this segment was Perrin letting go in the same way Rand let go. You know, like where Perrin's like, I can't hold back anymore, and that allows him to finally get the upper hand on Slayer and kill him.
So we can safely say
is like, you know,
we're probably not going to have our typical episode discussion today of Rand and then Perrin and then Elaine and Avienda, Leia and Nynaeve. Okay, cool. All right, anywhere else you want to go in particular? Anything else you want to discuss about style, perhaps, or anything miscellaneous? Should we start answering some fan questions? What do you want to do, boys?
I think we got to go into fan questions here.
Okay. Well, I have them all right here.
Our the fans have been with us up to this point, and now let them be heard.
Yes, they will have their questions answered about an hour into the episode. 50 minutes, give or take, maybe 45. It was a pretty late start today. Okay, so let's see here. Fan questions. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong part of the page here. Okay, so our first question came from Simon Flesher, and he asked, "How does it affect you this time around? It being this ending." Does it still affect you the same way it did the first time, or does this ending feel completely different? And I'll answer first. I said, to me, it honestly feels mostly the same. I've read and reread these books so many times that my opinions are pretty worn in by now and hard to change. I definitely have a greater appreciation, though, for the literary quality of certain aspects, I suppose, and it's hard not to when you're talking in depth for so many hours with somebody like Drew McCaffrey, of all people. So that's how I answered that one.
Okay. For me, it doesn't feel the same. Like, the emotions around reading something like that for the first time are too vivid. And it's a mistake, in my opinion, to continue reading something in the hopes that you'll force out that same emotional reaction, even though the times are different. However, I get something different out of it each time. And that something is reflective of where I'm at in my life at the moment. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I look for different things. So every time I do read it, it's satisfying in a different way.
Okay.
Drew, how'd you feel about it this time?
For me, I have a very different reaction to finishing this book, just yesterday than I did the day it came out when we hunkered down in our hotel rooms and read in Provo. I vividly remember finishing that book and closing it and expecting tears of some kind, expecting, a wave of emotion to hit me, and it didn't happen. It was more of this just completely hollow, almost disbelief that it was over.
Catatonia. In a weird way. For me...
I don't know if I'd say catatonia, more like shock.
Yeah. I have a video of my first time finishing the book. I actually don't think I've ever shown you that video, Drew.
No, I don't think so either. But with this time, there was more emotion for me. Like I said, this is the third time I've read A Memory of Light. I read it the day it came out. I reread it again a couple of months later, and then I haven't touched the Wheel of Time, really touched it since, until we started reading for this. And so while I had kind of, the academic knowledge of what happened in the epilogue and how plot lines were concluded, it, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like, there was a different emotional response to it where that just like overwhelming feeling of like, holy crap, what a masterpiece we just finished. You know, like, it was, you know, there were tears in my eyes when I read those final lines this time. When I read, but it was an ending, you know, and reading that epigraph by Loyal from The Dragon Reborn. And so I'm glad we did this, because in a lot of ways, like, yeah, I don't obsessively reread The Wheel of Time the way I did when I was younger. But it's good to remind myself of why I love this series so much, because it's not like I'm totally disconnected from The Wheel of Time. I'm still very active in the communities, and I'm still a moderator for the big Facebook group. I go to JordanCon, you know, like all the stuff where I'm still talking and thinking about The Wheel of Time, even though I hadn't read the books for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so reading them again had more of an impact than I expected, because it's easy for me to think, oh, I'm constantly thinking and talking about The Wheel of Time. It's the same old, but it's nice to be reminded, like, yeah, it's the same old, but it's been so long, you may forget why you love it so much that you're willing to have it in your life on a literal daily basis. So
yeah. I just remembered the perfect example of something that I didn't appreciate before, but have an appreciation for now because of a conversation on air with Drew McCaffrey, and that was the parallel, the symbolism that is personified in Min, Avienda, and Elaine in the Triple Goddess, in that whole literary thing, that literary trope. I had never been aware of something like that before, and it was endlessly fascinating for me afterward to do a lot more research on it and see, holy crap, he wasn't kidding. That was amazing. I do, like I said, I have a literary appreciation for it now that I didn't have before, specifically because it was Drew, I think, that I was reading it with. So, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Also, Simon, the same questioner, wanted us to discuss the various levels of Blade Master that approach Demon Dread. But, as we said in the post, you can check out our previous episode on the last battle for our opinions on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for the question, Simon. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Sweet. So the next question we've already answered. That's from Kyle Pollock. He was the one that wanted to know about expanding stories. The next one after him was Rashid Karugli, a common questioner. What's up, Rashid? Thanks for coming back. Who is your favorite Forsaken and why? He has two questions. That's the first one. Who's your favorite Forsaken and why? And what locations, towns excluded, did you find the most intriguing, where characters really didn't necessarily spend much time there? So, I'll answer. First, my favorite Forsaken, Demon Dread. He is just so damn powerful. He's focused. He's capable, very clearly capable. And apparently has an entire continent with prophecies about him. I didn't expect him to make the amount of trouble for the light that he did. And so I found him to be the most interesting, have the most dimension. And plus, it was really fun to hunt for him all these years. That hunt itself was fun. As far as places go, I mentioned on the podcast once, long ago, that I would definitely want to visit the Anceline Gardens. For those who might not remember, since they were a pretty obscure reference in one of our Forsaken socials way in the past, the Anceline Gardens were a high class. Was it Knife of Dreams? Just then, I thought it was like Shadow Rising. Oh my god!
It was Knife of Dreams. It was the Aron-Gar point of view at the beginning of Knife of Dreams.
So the Anceline Gardens were a high class restaurant / gambling den in the Age of Legends with only the finest goods and wines and patrons. You know, I picture it just gardens and sculptures and fountains everywhere. Graendal and Balthamel apparently were both frequenting the Anceline Gardens quite often, and both of them are Forsaken who are known for their physical appetites. So it sounds like a great weekend there, you know?
It's like Age of Legends Las Vegas, basically.
Yeah, it sounds like a great weekend or three. That's how I wrote down. What about you guys? Favorite Forsaken? And were there any places that you want more info on?
Moradin has always been my favorite Forsaken.
Philosophically speaking?
No, not even that. Just
Really?
like he
I thought it
always
was-
seemed like he was really mysterious. He was, as Moradin, he seemed more competent. Like as a Shawmale, he was kind of a bumbling idiot.
Yes.
Yeah, can't argue that.
I don't know. He has a good sense of style.
Yeah, you like the red and black.
Yeah,
You just inspired
Like-
me on something
like
I'm
the
not- sorry, go
way
ahead.
he does things. He thinks more clearly
Mm-hmm.
and strategically, but isn't shy of using force when necessary. And as far as places, I want to know more about the island of Madmen.
Oh yes, I didn't consider that.
That's totally what the last couple sentences are referring to, like unexplored lands. Like, oh yeah,
You know,
Going to
let's
Australia.
get that in there.
Yes. Oh, right away we
Freaking
arrived.
where
in
the
Australia.
Trollocs are made up of all the hideous insects. Like you've got a snake, spider, crocodile Trolloc.
Oh.
Right? Like, isn't
Spider
that
Trolloc would
terrifying?
be horrifying.
It's the
That would
body
be.
of-
Oh my god! You just gave me
Imagine the
nightmares.
body of a spider with the torso of a crocodile and arms that are snakes.
And they have hands on the ends of them.
No, like actual snake mouths. Not hands, snake mouths.
Oh.
Who needs thumbs when you have
Yeah.
fangs?
Right.
The spider part's still the
Fuck with
creepiest
your
part.
opposable thumbs.
I'm not even
Got
particularly
opposable jaws,
arachnophobic.
dude.
I don't mind spiders. I really don't care about spiders. They don't bother me too much.
You're
But
telling me
a
that if
Trolloc
you didn't
spider,
see- if
I
you
would
saw
be.
that thing,
Yeah.
Oh my god, I would be so fast in the opposite direction. Ugh.
Oh man.
yeah.
Anyway.
Terrifying. Nightmare fuel. You're welcome, listeners.
But yeah, I think for me, my favorite Forsaken is likely also Moradin, for many of the same reasons Pat said. I liked his unique perspective and reasoning. That he had a fascinating motivation, and it made sense to me that we would have somebody like this who, for to be blunt, is so far up his own ass about philosophy that he just decides the world needs to end.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, I've met some people over the years, especially in college, who
Nihilists?
got pretty far up their own asses about philosophy and came to conclusions that were very dangerous. Of course, they would never act on them because they were not
Sane.
like, yeah.
They would say that they're
but-
good people, but they're really obedient cowards.
Like so it made sense to me that if you have an all-powerful insane person who was this type of completely overboard academic, that you could end up with Ishamael. You could end up with Moradin. Like Pat said, though, it is very specifically Moradin, not Ishamael, because the Ishamael we see is in like late stage true power addiction, where like he's completely insane and
Yeah.
his body's literally being burned from the inside out, and he's like about to die.
Yeah. Yeah, and you
so-
guys just and bringing up Moradin versus Ishamael and their relative levels of sanity, you guys just inspired me on another answer that I'm going to have about a different question that we're going to answer very soon, actually.
Yeah,
but
but
you guys just
as
gave us
for the
inspiration.
lands, like the locations, I always wished we had seen something happen in the Drowned Lands, the kind of the northwestern border of Mayene.
Okay.
Just the brief mention they have of it sounds like a fun like adventure story location where it's swamps and they have giant snakes and all kinds of crazy animals.
Yes,
and,
Louisiana, basically.
I see. I thought it was.
gonna say the
it
Amazon.
was like the Amazon or like Southeastern Asia, something
Okay.
like that, where because there aren't native monster snakes in Louisiana.
Oh,
They're
sure.
native snakes, but there aren't like
Monster snakes.
reticulated pythons or anacondas or anything like that. But it reminded me like of the Anaconda movies, like that kind of a location where it would have been fun to
I'm
have some
thinking of
sort
Ice
of an
Cube now.
adventure like on a boat where they were going to Mayene for some reason to help Barrelane out and
Barreline and Galant's
And then
honeymoon.
yeah, it's
and then Jennifer
Horribly wrong.
Lopez and Ice Cube show up.
John Voight.
Yeah. Jon Voight was in that movie. I forgot about that.
Hey, he was the bad guy.
That's right. Oh. Of all the things we were going to talk about today, I did not expect Anaconda to be one of them.
Anaconda.
Wow.
But yeah, so what other listener questions do we have?
All right. Let me see here. We have one from Mark Geller. Actually, Mark has two. We actually have two Marks asking questions as well, so there's going to be another Mark after that. Mark Geller asks, and I know you're going to have fun with this one, Drew, what is your favorite book in the series after all? And he very, very carefully phrased it, you only get one. So we have to make a decision. Each of us three has to make a concrete decision on our favorite. I'm going to go with our favorite, not what we think is the best written, but your personal favorite Wheel of Time book. You get one. Do you guys need a minute to think? Should I answer first?
You can go first.
Yeah, okay. I figured I'd go first. Yeah. So for me, it was I will say what I was choosing. It was a tough choice between Lord of Chaos and Towers of Midnight. I was originally considering Lord of Chaos because of its length, its complexity, its pacing for a Jordan standard. Probably the most emblematic Wheel of Time book in my opinion. But my heart lies with Sanderson and Towers of Midnight. My final answer is definitively Book 13. Just for the sheer amount of oh my god moments in there. And plus, Matt rescuing my bae, Moiraine. Big thing for me. So, Towers of Midnight's my answer. That's my favorite Wheel of Time book, number 13.
Fair enough. Crossroads of Twilight, final answer.
What? You almost had me there.
Trollolo.
You said that with such a straight face, Pat. You actually had me thinking you were serious for about 1.8 seconds there.
No, I mean the full Crossroads of Twilight. That is Crossroads of Twilight and Knife of Dreams.
Okay, fair enough.
So Knife of Dreams, in other words.
Yeah.
Like if that wasn't
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. Okay, Pat says Knife of Dreams.
So yeah, I believe I addressed this earlier in our episodes.
You did, but you kept changing your answer.
For a very long time, I would have said The Shadow Rising. But after rereading Knife of Dreams, I think my opinion has shifted, and I also say Knife of Dreams.
So to answer Simon Flesher's question earlier about how does it affect you this time around compared to the first time, that might have been an answer for him there too. Drew McCaffrey has changed his favorite book from The Shadow Rising to Knife of Dreams.
Yep.
Awesome. Sweet. Going on. We all answered that one, right? Yeah, we did. Okay. Mark Geller, also asks, Min, this is such a great lore question. I know you're going to have fun with this, Drew. Min once had a viewing about Cadsuane saying she needed to teach them something. Rand and all the Ashaman. What was that thing? I have an answer, but I'm going to let you jump at it first.
So this is a matter of some debate. There is not a definitive answer to this, as far as I know. Maybe there's something in the notes that I haven't seen or heard about. But I always thought that it was that they are human beings, that they are not just weapons. They need to remember to laugh and cry. And that it's easy to get caught up in the Rand aspect of it, but that it was something all the Ashaman needed to learn, and eventually they did. And it was a big part of why Logain had such a powerful conclusion to his arc, where it was the choice of helping others and being a human rather than going for the Sa'angreal and being the weapon.
Yeah,
so
you
literally.
In what way does Cadsuane influence Logain's decision?
Because
Indirectly.
it's through Rand.
Through Rand.
So the viewing itself, if I remember right, the wording is she's going to teach you something. Not
you
just
and all the
you,
Ashaman.
but all of them.
Yeah,
but
that
all
was the phrasing. You and all the Ashaman.
Yeah, and so it's through Rand where he provides the example after Dragonmount, and when he tries to engage directly, in the last battle, and comes to the decision, no, like, I am not just a weapon. This is not my place. Mm-hmm. And it ties back to the founding of the Ashaman, where the name Ashaman means guardian, not weapon.
Yeah.
And while Rand, in his insanity, said create weapons, the original thought behind it was to create guardians. Mm-hmm. And so...
Yeah. Yeah, and Rand was very careful to mention that not just anybody who protects anything can call themselves an Ashaman. To be an Ashaman, you have to have a true and just cause to stand up for it. It's something that's very, very different. I shouldn't say very different, but it's very distinct.
Yeah.
Drew, you took pretty much my exact answer. And I'm glad you did, because that means I was right. In my headcanon...
That's just my interpretation. But.
Okay, well, guess what? That thing was laughter and tears. I'm pretty sure. I will say this. Yeah. I'm just agreeing with Drew. I'm not asserting this as a fact. Rand was leading himself, and by extension, the Ashaman, down a very dark and bloody road to ruination. With their attitude about having to be hard, having to be inhumanly so. It was Cadsuane who conspired with Sorilea to teach him laughter and tears, him being the Dragon Reborn, and then this in turn saved the Ashaman when Rand sent them his final message. I want to say it was via Narishma? Was it Narishma he sent with his final message to the Black Tower? Saying, I was wrong, we are not weapons, we are men. Yeah. And then I wrote down, I'm so glad you brought this up, Drew. This might also have been a big influence on Logain's decision to sacrifice Sakarnan to save the lives of ordinary people.
Okay,
So I think...
I'm going to have to disagree with you guys on this one.
Really? Okay, let's hear it.
What do you think it was?
First of all, I like the idea more that it's something that she's going to teach them after the fact. And it simply hasn't happened yet. Which is perfectly plausible because Cadsuane as the Amerlin is in a position to do just that. Further, I know Cadsuane and Sorilea set out to teach Rand laughter and tears, but she only succeeded in an indirect fashion.
She succeeded by accident.
She was the catalyst of events that led to Rand realizing. It was more of an internal thing than her teaching him something through her own actions. I find the connection to be a little too indirect for my taste.
So the only issue I really have with that is that if it is something she teaches them, like the Black Tower after the last battle, it has to be something she already taught Rand before the last battle, because it's something she's specifically teaching Rand and the Ashaman. Right. So maybe it is, in his plan in the Outriggers there was going to be something about the Black Tower having problems and Cadsuane needing to get them back on the right track to the whole laughter and tears thing. But I think at a certain point it has to be something like that. Because otherwise it's impossible for her to teach Rand and the Ashaman the same thing.
Or it's Sudoku. We really don't know exactly what it is, but both Rand and the Ashaman are still alive at the end of the book, so you're absolutely right. It could have been something planned for the Outrigger novels. I don't like that.
And Cadsuane knows.
Yeah, I don't like that interpretation. I hate that interpretation, but I can't argue it.
That's an interesting question. At the end of it all, at the funeral or whatever, Cadsuane clearly is I'm not buying this. This is nonsense.
How did you feel?
She doesn't know, but she knows.
Before we continue with our questioners... Oh, sorry, Drew, were you going to jump on that?
So I just want to say, point out with the Cadsuane epilogue scene.
I loved it.
There's some possibility of disconnect there. So that was a scene Brandon wrote. Therese and a few people on Brandon's blog back in 2013 actually asked about that scene. And Peter said Team Jordan gave them permission to say that Brandon himself wrote the words of that little scene. He said he's being closed-mouthed about what specifically came from the notes. But in general, Robert Jordan left quite a few notes on where people ended up at the end of the book. And so this person asked, am I right to assume that her implied fate wouldn't have been put in if the notes say something different, assuming there were notes on it? And Peter just said the notes about fates at the end were not contradicted. So there's some wiggle room there that maybe it wasn't Robert Jordan's plan for Cadsuane to end up as Amerlin. Personally, I think it probably was.
Yeah. Just from lack of a better,
So-
contender, do we have anybody who would have been better for the job?
Yeah.
Well, when
Moiraine, I guess.
died,
Nynaeve, maybe.
I thought
But I don't think she's a leader, though.
Nynaeve, Moiraine,
Nynaeve would
Moiraine
just
could've
laugh
been-
at the suggestion. She would not want it.
make Swan the Amerlin again. Well, if she wasn't dead.
Plus, with
Yeah,
Nynaeve, that would
yeah.
take her away from Malkier. She wouldn't
Yeah.
go for that.
Well, and this is why, like, one of my kind of issues with the end of the book, where I was like, if Lan died, Nynaeve can just become the Amerlin.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I get why Lan wasn't killed, because we wanted to have the happy ending for them. I'm fine with him being alive. We don't need to reopen this.
Yeah,
can of
we
worms,
don't.
though. We beat that pretty senseless.
Right. So let's move on with the listener questions, because I know we have a few more.
Oh,
Yeah, we definitely do.
is that my sister?
It is.
Aha. Well, let's give McCaffrey a right of way here and see what Anna has to ask
Anna's in?
on the Facebook group.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Because I already
she
have her
asks-
asking a question here. She's second from next. Do you want to address hers first? Is that what you're saying? Or do you mean she added something new just
Pat.
now?
No, Pat was just saying to railroad her to the front of the line.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that then. So, yeah, Anna McCaffrey Wheeler, who's been a guest of ours before. Check out Crossroads of Twilight. Some excellent theorizing there. She asks, are Rand and Egwene as the dragon in the flame a yin-yang dynamic? Does Rand have a healthy relationship with his three ladies? Do you see any of them lasting? Have at her, man.
So, for the first question, the yin and yang dynamic
Yep.
there, I think there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's like a temptation to say yes, they are, just because of all the symbolism around the White
would be
Tower and the Black Tower and the,
Convenient.
as you
Yes.
said, the Dragon's Fang, the Flame of Tarpaulon, and all this. But when you dig into their characters, there are some ways in which I think you can say that they have very different approaches to power. Rand does not want power. He tries to run away from it at first, and he only reluctantly accepts power. He kind of hates the way he has to use power, whereas Egwene basically embraces power at every turn and constantly seeks out more power. So there's a parallel, and contrast there that you can make an argument for. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really stands out to me as like a balance or contrast in their characters.
Well, and not like some comparisons that you could make fade away after Rand has his moment on Dragonmount. Like he was more chaotic before that, but then afterward he becomes
Serene.
he ascends, right? And then he becomes more, like Rob said, serene is a good word for it. And Egwene is always exactly the same. She doesn't have a moment where she, pulls herself up out of a bad situation like that. So you could only make an argument from it.
I would say there
Gathering
was
Storm.
one possible, the Gathering Storm. There's one possible moment with Sylviana that could be argued as that moment.
Well, and as Rand chills out, Egwene becomes the Amerlin.
Yeah.
So she's only the flame after Rand is also more like the flame.
Right. I also brought that up in our Towers of Midnight discussion at the time, too. I'm going to, while Drew, you continue to chew on that, because you left off a little uncertain like you were going to continue. I'm just going to say my answer, and maybe it'll jog something loose for you.
Okay.
I don't feel particularly qualified to answer this question to start off with, both as a single guy, talking about... Actually, I was going to address also the ladies as well. I'll leave that part out for now. But on the subject of Rand and Egwene, I have always thought so. That they do kind of represent a yin-yang dynamic, but I don't think the metaphor quite works. I don't see Egwene thematically as an opposite of the dragon, so much as I see her mirroring Latra Posey Decum's position against Luce Theron in the War of the Shadow. I think that's ultimately what she represents in Rand's life, in the dragon's life, and as what struggle he needs to overcome and what wrong he needs to right. So I would just say not quite If you were to ask me, I would say she's more of just like she's just another opportunity for the dragon to correct his mistakes.
Yeah, I think that there's a good argument to be made that yes, that symbolism exists and you can draw those parallels. I don't know if I would go so far as to say that's like their purpose is to be this balance to each other. Because ultimately the White Tower is much less than we are given to, understand it at the beginning of the series. That Egwene is the leader of just one of the factions. She's not like a true balance for the Dragon Reborn.
You don't think so? Or did I misunderstand that?
I don't think so.
Wow. Well, I don't think she was a balance for the Dragon Reborn, but she was as good as humanity could do.
The attempt at Marilor felt very shoehorned in to me, especially with some of the things like I'm the Watcher of the Seals. And
Right.
utter nonsense. Like it just. So maybe there was an attempt, but it just felt forced and fell flat.
Could be.
And that's interesting to consider. Are we... we should also address the second part of her question, the ladies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does Rand have a healthy relationship with these three ladies, and do you see any of them lasting? Just for those who forget the question, because I forget all the time.
So, I really don't know if any of the three relationships are particularly healthy during the events of the series. I think there's just like so much else going on that he can't properly spend the time. None of them can properly spend the time to develop a healthy relationship. It's certainly not healthy with Aviendha, where Rand is constantly running away from her. I don't think it's healthy with Min, where she is constantly like kind of running roughshod over him and forcing him to do things that she wants and he doesn't. Taking her with him into danger, things like that. And there's no real relationship to speak of between Rand and Elaine for most of the series, because they just rarely see each other. However, I do think all three of them have enough of a foundation in their relationships with Rand that going forward after the last battle, they could develop into healthy relationships now that, the world isn't about to end.
I don't... Well, I only really see it with Elaine. Like
I just realized we didn't get an answer from Pat on the yin yang thing, did we? Did I skip over you there, man?
To that issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Sorry.
Been hitting the pipe a little too hard there, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, actually, I haven't yet, but I'm considering it. Maybe I'm going to put it off a little longer now.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, so his relationship with Aviendha, there's a lot of attraction there, to be sure. I don't know that they have anything that could provide a solid basis for a relationship. Unless you consider... They could raise children together and do that well. And so, yeah, there's some potential there. I don't think it exists right now. Min, her purpose is over. Like, she was kind of a counter to his darker moments. And then now that that's not necessary anymore, like, they would have no idea where to pick up the fragments of their relationship, because it's so different now.
Yeah, that's part of why I always envisioned Min going to Shan-Chan in the Outriggers, and that Rand would maybe visit her from time to time, but she wouldn't be like a principal partner for him the way she was for most of the series. Because, for better or for worse, until A Memory of Light, Min didn't serve any purpose as a character except in direct relation to Rand. Like, everything she was to serve the betterment of Rand. She didn't have any agency of her own. And so now that she has the potential for that agency to, like, be the Doomseer for Shan-Chan, for the Empress of Shan-Chan, and like, through her viewings and her influence in the court, work to better the society of Shan-Chan, I think she's a more compelling character away from Rand, and that maybe Rand could, like, go visit from time to time, because there still is that, like, that comfort zone that Rand clearly developed with Min, that I'm sure he would like to keep intact.
Sure.
She's the most homey of
Yeah.
the three of them. She's the most domestic, and while Rand, yeah, he wants to go out and explore the world and do all of this, part of that attractiveness to it for him is that he can explore the world while not having to deal with palaces and lords and ladies and politics and all of that. He can deal with people in a more genuine person-to-person manner, which is how his relationship was always set up with Min.
Yeah. Yeah. As for this part of the question, I had two different answers. I answered who I would pick, and I answered who I think Rand would work the best with. If I was Rand, I would personally choose Elaine. I mean, yeah, she's gorgeous, but I'm sure the other two are as well. But with Elaine, there is this greater sense of mischief and fun that seems like it would stick around well into senior years. Growing old with Elaine sounds like it'd be pretty fun. Plus, her being a queen is a big plus. I mean, can't deny that. But as far as Rand's comfort level, you brought up a very, very good point there, Drew. In Winter's Heart, specifically, in Far Madding, there were a few scenes that they legitimately read like husband and wife in a few ways. Yeah. There was clearly a lot more comfort between Rand and Min than we have seen between Rand and Aviendha or Rand and Elaine. So, for Rand, I would say Min, but if I was in his position, I'd say Elaine. Sorry, I know, Drew, you're an Aviendha fan. But
I mean, I like Elaine too.
Yeah.
I've been on the record as saying I love the Rand and Elaine chapters at the beginning of the Shadow Rising, and
right.
I love a Lily in Winter in Winter's Heart. So yeah, I'm not offended by that at all. I think they would continue to be fun if they have the proper time to build a relationship beyond just making out in shadowed corners of the Stone of Tyr.
Yeah, Hard Heads was that.
Camelin.
Hard Heads was that chapter you're talking about, right?
For a year and a half.
Yeah, really. Enough talk. You will bed me now. Oh wait, that was Aviendha.
They have had something from you that I have not.
Yeah, really. And that is the D. All right.
Except Aviendha clearly had the D before.
Yeah, she definitely had.
Well, I don't know if she did.
She was the first.
She was the first. Yeah.
Well,
Rand lost his virginity.
Yeah, I thought you were saying she had slept with other guys before Rand.
Oh, no.
No. Yeah. Well, she makes mention that she has. Hasn't she mentioned that she has? When Rand was like indignant over not over her having seen other men, but when she was referring afterward to Elaine and how he was still Elaine's, and Rand is like, "What? You and I just what?" And then Aviendha goes, "You're not the first man I've known. Does that bother you?" I think she says something like that. I don't know if she actually slept with other men.
I do not remember that.
No. That's a different character.
No, I do not.
You might be getting your wires crossed with
98% sure Aviendha said that to him in the Far Snows. At least, not that she slept with other men, but he's not the first man she was into.
Did not say that during the Far Snows. No way.
If you know what I'm talking about, if you're a fan and I happen to not be speaking completely out of my ass, let me know where she said this, because I could swear to God I remember Aviendha saying, not confirming that she has been with other men, but Rand isn't her first love, perhaps, or maybe her first significant kind of thing. And then she asked him specifically, does that bother? Or maybe it was something that Rand considered. Maybe it was just inside Rand's head. I don't know. Something's telling me that there is a specific moment like this, but I can't, for the life of me, point out exactly what it was. Okay. So if you know what I'm talking about, answer it for us.
Let's move on with listener questions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Before we get too far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, so to back up a little bit, because Anna asked after Mark Warren. So Mark Warren is our next questioner here. He asks, what seems to have changed conceptually over the series? For example, Moiraine's power in Book 1, or the identity of, Demon Dread, etc., etc. What did he substantially alter or refine as this series went on?
The Aes Sedai, for sure.
So that's an interesting question, because you can take it a couple of different ways. Like, as Pat said, the Aes Sedai as a concept, I don't know if it's necessarily that Robert Jordan changed his mind and thus refined them as the series went on, in the same sense that he did with things like how the world of dreams works and dream shards in Eye of the World versus the end of the series, or changing his mind on Tiny Mandred. I think he always planned to slowly strip away the veil of mysterious, all-powerful Tar-Valon. I think that was always in the cards, but it was something that in concept did change across the series. So I guess it's kind of depends on how you want to interpret the question.
Okay.
I think in the latter interpretation there, it's one of the best things about the Wheel of Time is how good Robert Jordan was at establishing expectations in certain ways, and then in a natural and seemingly inevitable way subvert those expectations the more you learn. It's one of the reasons the world building is so powerful, it's so deep, is that he doesn't spend just a casual moment to describe something and then leaves it at that. There's always a constant dynamic of knowledge and understanding to the characters. So I like that example of the Aes Sedai and Tar-Valon, as an institution going from this inscrutable, omnipotent, group where as long as they're with one Aes Sedai, they're safe. Where there's this sense of just pure confidence.
They got this
in the Aes Sedai from the start, and then by the end of the series, there's almost contempt for the Aes Sedai.
Yeah,
almost. There's
the
outright
Aes Sedai
contempt
are here.
halfway through
That'll
the series.
Help. And this applies to a great many things conceptually. Male channelers, the Forsaken, there is
Shadow Spawn.
Yeah. For the first several books, we're shrouded in mysteries, even as we're learning about the world. And then slowly over time, they get brought into the realistic perspective. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that would apply.
So as to the former option, the former interpretation, where it's like things that Robert Jordan established early on and then changed his mind or tweaked or refined over the course of the series. The World of Dreams is probably the biggest that I can think of. The way characters interact with dreams and the effect that dreams have on the world. There's also very definitely a refinement to traveling. He wrote it in such a manner in the Eye of the World that you can fit it into what became established canon, where it's like, oh yeah, that's just a true power gateway that Ishamael wove in the Dragonmount prologue, and Rand traveling at Tarwin's Gap and at the Eye, he just didn't describe the gateway. It doesn't directly contradict anything later on, so you can fit it in, but there's definitely a change and a refinement to how gateways work, how traveling works, essentially.
So I took this a little more literally. I said, for my answer, I don't think, because he mentioned Moiraine's relative strength in the One Power as well, like Moiraine's power in Book 1. I wrote down, I don't think Moiraine's strength really changed too much, not counting for her soul draining in Sindal. We always, that has a clear explanation. She was always lauded, along with Swan Sanche, Elida do Avenria Royhan, Cadswain Maladrin. What is her last name? Maladrin, right?
Yeah, Cadswain
Maladrin, yeah. These and Moiraine Damodred were always considered the most powerful Aes Sedai currently in the tower as we met them. And when we met Moiraine, she had an Angreal. So I don't think her level of strength, in terms of her base capability, changed very much until Jordan, or maybe it was Sanderson, I can almost guarantee it was Jordan, decided to nerf her in the hands of the Aelfin Eelfin. By the way, Drew, question. Which one is it, again, I keep forgetting, the Aelfin or the Eelfin that actually drained her of the power, of her ability in the power? It's the Aelfin, right?
Oh, I think it was both.
Really? I thought it was
She went through the Eolfin's gateway with Lanfear.
Right, but one of them specifically has that has that longing for draining another human being and experiencing their emotions and stuff like that. That was the Aelfin, right? Wouldn't that
was
perhaps?
Both.
Oh, it could be both. Like again, once again, Rob could be speaking out of his ass. I hate that Jordan changed the identity of Taim, or Demon Dread. Taim, T-Man Dread. It feels like a cheap, they're on to me kind of move that he just kind of retconned later. I suppose it is also worth noting that Jordan increased Fael's original age, as we mentioned in the Shadow Rising, because of what I guess I'll call a bit of fan atmosphere over Fael being, 15, 16 at the time when she got married to Rand? Or Perrin.
Originally 15. And
16.
Perrin was 19.
Yeah. Oh, it's 16 and 19? That's not too
15.
bad.
15.
Oh, originally was... Okay, I thought originally was 16,
and then
changed to 17.
he changed her to be like 17, 18.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Mark also had a second question. And he asked, what was signaled very early on that brilliantly unfolded through the very end? I'll answer first.
Ooh, there are so many answers to this.
Yeah, I know. I came up with one that I just learned today. Just today I learned it. I just watched it. I just realized it. Swan Sanche and her story to Matt about her uncle and how her uncle died. That is exactly how Swan Sanche died.
Yep.
Running into a burning building to save someone else. That's amazing. And it was to Matt that she told that story to, and it was him that she was running into the building to save. So, I love how that came out. I just made that connection today when I was doing my notes, and I had another chill right there on the spot. I was like, oh my god. But when you're talking about an author like Robert Jordan, who was so famous for his proclivity for foreshadowing and for planning in the future and world building, it's just, there's so many examples you could bring. So I want to hear what you guys think.
So my favorite, easily my favorite, foreshadowed event is the Sama Nisse, the Red Veils.
What? Oh, okay.
That we had this idea given to us all the way back in the Shadow Rising of Aiel male channelers going into the Blight to die fighting the Dark One, in air quotes. And that there was a story, that came out because some maidens, would sometimes go with them to hunt Trollocs. And Shael Tigraine died, because she, ran into Isam, basically.
Really?
Excuse me, I'm mixing that up. It was Janduin.
Yeah, I was going to say,
died.
Wait a second.
Yeah, he went. The maidens did go up sometimes because that was when they got the story of the Eye of the World.
Yep.
They ran into the Tinkers. No, but it was Janduin died because after Tigraine, died in childbirth, he lost the will to live and all this, and he went up with the channelers to fight in the Blight, and he ran into Luke, and he said that he looked like Shael, and he wouldn't raise his spear to defend himself.
Yeah.
And
so my question though is, how does that tie to the Sama and Sai?
Because all the pieces for the town and the channelers getting turned to the shadow, all of it is laid out in book 4.
I'm still
and then
confused.
we finally see them show up at the end of Towers of Midnight.
How does Janduin running into Isam have anything to do with the Red Veiled Aiel or the town? I'm still lost.
Because Isam was raised
Because
in the town?
Isam was raised in the town, and and Janduin went up with all the guys who were getting turned.
Right.
So it had to be at the town this happened? It couldn't just be like a random Trolloc raid or whatnot? Somewhere in the Blight?
Well, it happened in the Blight. We know
right,
it
the Blight's a huge place,
it doesn't
man.
have to be in the town. I'm not saying that Okay, you're like completely misunderstanding what I'm saying.
I have to. Yeah, I must be.
I'm not saying that it took place in the town. I'm saying that all the pieces, all the foreshadowing for what is happening with the Aiel channelers getting turned and the existence of the town and Isam being involved in this like whole thing going on in the Blight were all laid on the table in the Shadow Rising, and then we never engage with it again for 7, 8, 9 books, and then bam, a sledgehammer of a reveal in the epilogue of Towers of Midnight. I loved it.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
to
It
me,
was a
it
big question.
always felt like something that maybe, like, I know that Jordan had to come up with some world building reason for the Aiel to banish their male, channelers, and that, heading into the Blight to spit in the Dark One's eye was a really badass and very Aiel way to go. But to me, this whole time I'd always been considering the Sama and Sai and the Red Veils as perhaps a Brandon Sanderson idea, saying, what if we dove into that trove and we created some characters?
No, it was not a Brandon Sanderson idea. Robert Jordan wrote the town scene in...
Oh, that's right. Yes, I had just learned that he wrote the town scene previously. That's right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can't argue against it. I can't, prove that wrong. It's just that was not anywhere close to my headcanon. That's interesting. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we all get a chance to answer that? What was signaled very early on that was brilliantly unfolded through the very end?
All of Min's viewings in Barrelon,
right? Yeah.
Like give me chills every time. And we spent hours and hours talking about all the viewings and hypothesizing about what they could mean. So I'm gonna go with those for my favorite bits that unfolded later.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
As much as Min sucks, her viewings were really fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going on with more questions?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So this next one comes from Mary Saucier Rayotin, the wife of C. Rayotin, or Cy Rayotin. I apologize once again if I'm getting your name wrong. But Mary Saucier Rayotin asks, this question is about the madness. And this, by the way, after reading this question, is something I really wish we had a chance to discover with Anna during the Cross of the Twilight episode. But Mary asks, Nynaeve sees the madness in Rand's mind. Does it stay with him when he takes over Moradin's body? Is the taint connected to the physical body or the soul? And, furthermore, would a man tainted that same way also be tainted in the world of dreams?
Oh man, that is... Ooh, that's a complex question. My immediate, instinct is to say that I don't think it carries over with Rand into Moradin's body. I do think it's attached to the soul, or it's attached to the body, especially because it has physical effects on male channelers. I talk about how in advanced stages of, the taint, that their bodies begin to rot and things like that. But if it is attached to the soul, I'm not sure it really matters if it traveled with Rand to Moradin's body or not, because it didn't matter after Rand's apotheosis anyway. That in all effect, the madness was gone at that point. All it did from that point forward was continue to allow him access to his soul's memories, to Lews Therin's memories. I don't know. Well, maybe as I talk through that a little more, maybe I say it does need to carry over. I guess we don't really know. We don't have enough time with Rand at the end of it in Moradin's body to know whether or not he retains Lews Therin's memories. So it could be either way, but my gut is that he's not in any danger of the madness, so to speak. That only if there are any effects of it that linger in crossover, it's just allowing him to access those soul memories and there are no ill effects.
Okay.
But that's me, like, completely, off the cuff.
Yeah.
I haven't ever looked into this. This is a really really fun kind of avenue of theorizing that I hadn't considered before.
Yeah. I'll say, my thoughts at least, are that the taint is not connected to the soul, but it is connected to the body. And I wrote, we know that the connection to the Dark One is what buffers someone against the taint. But it's still a physical weave on a physical brain, as we saw, as Mary mentioned. Nynaeve sees this weave on Rand's brain when she delves him in Towers of Midnight. And, as you just mentioned, Drew, does it really matter at that point, after Rand has his apotheosis, and she also can see the glowing happening underneath all of the thorns? I suppose it depends on how much you want to intermingle the brain and the soul as concepts, or how they work in the universe of the Wheel of Time. Myself, I don't see Rand's physical brain also moving into Moradin's physical body alongside his soul. I'm pretty sure it was, myself, just a soul transfer, not a literal brain transfer. So my thoughts are that, no, Rand's madness didn't make the transition with him, but it's fun to consider when realizing that this would in turn make Moradin insane. Or, more or less insane. Right.
Yeah.
And I do believe that somebody tainted so would still be tainted in Tel'aran'rhiod. You need a physical body to be there. They are pretty, inextricably linked there. Also, and just before I wrap up my answer on this one, this is the question that you guys inspired me earlier on when you were talking about Ishamael versus Moradin and their relative sanities. Ishamael was absolutely insane. Moradin was not. So I think I'm going to use that for why. I think it's a physical body thing more than it is a soul thing.
Yeah, I agree with that thought process.
Awesome. Cool. Any thoughts, Pat, or have we beat that one into the ground?
No, everything you were saying makes plenty of sense to me. I
Okay,
don't know
cool.
that I have that much to add.
We have one final fan question, and that was from Christian Hayden, and he wants to know, I'd like a deep dive from your perspective on Fane and the power he found. To me, this is one of the greatest mysteries of the books and one of the least understood. So my answer, just off the cuff, I'll admit to a lot of curiosity myself. The ending of A Memory of Light implies that the Dark One himself is just the essence of evil that is necessary for everyone to have the concept of free will. But, if that's the case, what is the evil of Shadar Logoth / Aridhal / Mordeth / Shisam? What is that, evil squared? I'm also kind of confused. So, let's hear it. What do you guys think?
Well, it's time to get into deep, penetrating lore with Drew.
Ooh.
So, we actually have some answers.
Oh?
Some years back, Matt Hatch, he's the founder of Theoryland. He's probably more well-known nowadays as the host of The Dusty Wheel on YouTube. He is probably
Matt Hatch.
The foremost metaphysics theorizer I've ever met in the Wheel of Time community. He, like I said, some years back, he drove Mr. Sanderson to the airport. You can look up this interview on Theoryland. It's called Driving Mr. Sanderson, Matt Hatch. And, so he had Brandon as like a hostage, basically, for an hour or so in the car. And took the opportunity to ask him some questions. And he asked him quite a bit about Padan Fane. And there's some really great quotes. And I'm just going to read some of these out.
Good. Okay, good. I haven't heard any of these.
Matt Hatch says, you mentioned that Mordeth was a man who had, quote, power. You were reported as saying that his power was that which he got by seeking out all of the evil things that weren't related to the Shadow. And Brandon said he was seeking things that were related to the Shadow. I think that might be a misquote. He was looking into the power of the Shadow in order to defeat it. That was his goal. He was looking into everything. He was looking into things that were not necessarily related to the Dark One as well. He was looking for everything he could get. So, he wanted to defeat the Dark One, and he felt that he could find other ways to do it. He originally was good. He was not this terrible person to begin with, but he was looking to defeat the Dark One, to find a way to defeat the Shadow. And he looked into a lot of things he shouldn't have looked into. There are evils that are not necessarily directly related to the Dark One, though everything evil kind of has a connection, just as there are goods that are not necessarily related to the one power. We're talking much as Perrin running with the wolves. This is a thing older than that. There are other things, other evils, old in a similar way. And he goes on to say a little later, is Mordeth's power, this evil power, comparable to the one power and the true power? Is it a power that can be woven? And he said, no, it's more along the lines of Perrin's wolf power, something more natural. And he said, it's more of a natural but unnatural power. So essentially, as the interview goes on, there are many magics in the world not related directly to the Dark One or the One Power. We see some of them. We see, as he said, as Brandon said, the Wolf Brothers, sniffers like Hurin, doomseers like Min, yes. the Aelfin and the Ealfin in Sindal. These are these natural powers that are not directly related to the One Power or the True Power. And the power of Shadar Logoth is one of those. And so it's something that it just is. It exists. It's not something that gets destroyed. As we saw, like, you know, it ate at the taint, and it was like a mutual destruction with the taint, but it wasn't gone from the world. It still remained in Mordeth. And this is one of the reasons that I personally do not have an issue with how Padan Fain died here. Because this is not the end of the power of Shadar Logoth. The Fain points of view that we get at the end of this book, he's thinking about how he wants to find somewhere to seep his power into the ground. And he found that. When Matt killed him, his body, like, melts into the ground.
Okay.
The power of Shadar Logoth remains.
Do we know that, though? Because it said something about the power dying, too. The power died with him. It says that specifically. The power died with him. I think it says that specifically.
The power did not die with Fain. The power melted into the ground. So there is this natural, unnatural power, as many other magics are, still in the world, just sitting there waiting for somebody to discover it. This is, so like, while in the coming ages, we have, a potential for world peace and things like that, and in the next turning of the wheel, they will likely forget about war. But we have another option, along with boring into the Dark One's prison in the next turning, where you could discover this power instead, to reintroduce war and strife to the world. Yeah. And I am also, along the lines of this theory, a big fan of it, that Fain was going to, the pattern was moving him to Shadar Logoth, so that if Rand killed the Dark One, Fain would then have attacked Rand, and Rand would have had to seal Fain away. And over time, over the turnings of the wheel, people would forget about the Dark One, because they're like, oh, the Dark One's dead, the dragon killed him. And then, the next turning, they bore into it and find this power instead.
Which has been fermenting and bubbling away for thousands of years.
I'm so confused. I could have sworn it specifically said the power of Mashadar died with Fain.
Okay, so
I'm trying to look up the actual
Matt Cawthon's point of view.
Yep.
Matt does not know everything. He may think it died with him, but this is a natural power. Just stabbing a dude wouldn't kill a natural power.
Yeah,
but let me find the actual quote.
I've been looking for the actual quote, and I can't find it because I don't have my physical with me. I listened to an audiobook, and we can't play that part of the audiobook for copyright reasons.
I do not have the audiobook. Oh, or the ebook on me. Alright.
I would like to get to the bottom of this right now. That'd be awesome.
But yeah,
we would not get a definitive answer. But I want to know if it specifically says he died.
What it comes down to, though, is that simply
the unreliable narrator.
Matt stabbing Padan Fain wouldn't destroy the power. The only thing we see in the series that can actually destroy chunks of the power of Shadar Logoth is
the taint.
The taint.
Yeah. But I thought it died with him because he hadn't yet manifested anywhere into the ground. But your argument is that that act was him manifesting into the ground.
Correct.
Okay, it's interesting. It's interesting. I could have sworn it died with him. I could have sworn it specifically said it died with him, but judging on the fact that Matt has been an unreliable narrator, you're right. He doesn't know everything. Even if it specifically says that, this could be interpreted as the taint, not the taint, Mashadar finally finding a seed.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
I don't think it's a coincidence that he dies at Sheol Ghul.
Oh no.
Yes.
Yeah, that feels intentional.
That's stretching plausibility.
Okay, so this is in Fane's point of view, in Shai-Sam's point of view.
No, this is not how a meeting with old friends should go.
Okay, so he gets stabbed with the dagger, and then tied to this pitiful mortal form. Mordeth screamed, Padan Fane howled, and felt his flesh melting from his bones. The mists trembled, began to swirl and shake. Together they died. So it's Mordeth and Fane died, but it does not say anything.
I thought it was the Mists and Fane, or Mists and Mordeth / Fane. Together they died. Hey, it depends on how you interpret it, I guess. It leaves a lot, like you said, it leaves wiggle room.
It is fairly ambiguous.
Yeah, but
and it's probably intentionally written that way too.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said though, I don't have an issue with the way Fane. So here's the big thing. The dagger is a touchstone for the power, right?
Mm-hmm. The power of Shatter Logoth, not the one
Yes.
power. Yeah.
The dagger melted into the mess that had been Padan Fane. The dagger melted into the ground. The power permeates.
Well, yeah,
the
it didn't
ground.
evaporate. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, no, there's no quote from Matt in this about the power dying.
Depending on how you interpret it. When it says together they died, is it talking about the power in Fane or Fane and Mordeth together? Because it's also specifically mentioning the mists.
It says the mists trembled, and then together
Changing
they
the
died.
Subject.
After talking about Fane and Mordeth.
So yeah,
Like,
it's all how you
and the
semantics.
fact,
It's how you
the
interpret
fact
it.
remains, even if the mist died like that, the power is in the dagger, and the dagger melts into the ground here. The dagger permeates into the ground.
Because even a pebble, as Moiraine says from Shatter Logoth, is enough.
Yeah.
Until the it's wiped
one
out.
gets
But
the impression that it's like a solid state kind of evil thing, where they might be different to the eye in form, but as far as the content of evil in any piece,
you know what?
is concerned, it's
I might actually be able to bridge these ideas here.
All 100% there.
Mashadar seems a lot like a fungus, and that dagger may have been the last spore.
Huh.
But if that last spore found fertile ground, yeah, there's a good argument to be made there.
But yeah, what did you say that was the last question?
That was the last
question?
listener question, yes.
Okay. Because we do have a few more segments to get to.
Yeah, I know.
Did we thoroughly answer that gentleman's question?
Hold on, I'm going back up to check the question itself. Oh, no, that's at the bottom of my list. What am I saying here? Let's see here. Oh, I just wanted to talk about how infuriated I was by the ending of Padan Fane, how that was handled. But that was all of Christian Hayden's question. To me, that was one of the greater mysteries of the books and one of the least understood. That's all he said.
Okay.
Okay, Rob. So I think this next segment is you're the host of this.
Aha! I am the host of the next segment. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming now to a segment in which I will formally ask my co-hosts, Drew and Pat, and anybody listening who happens to be sharing a brew, to pour another full glass. That's the sound of me pouring some whiskey. Because I had the idea for this segment very recently, and what I want to do is to go over a complete list, or at least a, the bare bones of a list of all of the casualties we had in A Memory of Light. Not just the last battle, but everybody who died who was notable in this book, and to share a drink or perhaps a sip separately in each of their honors. So, do we have our drinks ready, gentlemen? Okay, so Our first death, for those who have their drinks prepared, we're going to take a sip for each, and I'll just say exactly how they died and who they were. Our first, and these are in no particular order, by the way, Jory Congar, who bled to death pinned under a Trolloc. Rest in the light, Jory. Sip for you, my man.
My dude.
All right. Karuna Nachiman, unable to defend herself against Grandal at Thakandar. A drink for Karuna.
To Karuna.
Queen Tenobia Kazadi, killed in a vain maneuver orchestrated by the Shadow's corruption of the great captains. A drink for Queen Tenobia.
I'm glad she's dead.
I am too, but I'm not glad in how she died. I would have preferred it to be her own stupidity rather than something legitimate. Alright. King Al-Salam Al-Madar, slain in the battle off-screen in the Battle of Shale Ghul. A drink for King Al-Salam. Woo! Whiskey and water, in hindsight, was not a good combination for this segment.
Oh, hell no. What on earth do you think?
I have a good whiskey, though. I have a very good whiskey I'm going to talk about during the final draft, but man, this is going to leave me a little messed up for tomorrow. A drink for Trom on Galad's behalf, because we know what a stubbornly sober prick he is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this point, I want to say I want to give credit to somebody on DragonMount.com, an admin, maybe just a moderator. Actually, I didn't see his credentials, but this was Baird Bell Madar, ironically, giving us this list on DragonMount.com. And his or her phrasing, was just too perfect not to quote directly for this next one. Romonda Cassin, killed doing what she does best, ignoring orders. But, and this is my addition, she died in her fight against the Shadow, so to her we drink.
Mm-hmm.
Ruark, clan chief of the Tardad Isle, taken by Grandal's compulsion, killed by Avienda. Big sip for you, my man. You were done cold by Team Jordan.
Ruark.
From this dream, all men must wake.
Oh, boys. This is rough. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and you're like gulping, too. So.
Oh, I know. I'm having a
Small
sip,
sips.
and this is like 3/4 water, but my goodness.
Okay.
Particularly heartbreaking one for me. Huron, killed at the end of the Battle of Merlor, dying for Lord Rand.
Oh,
Rest in the light, Huron.
and the last embrace of the mother welcomed him home.
Alana Mosfani, who never had her chance to actively fight the Shadow as one of the Green Aja, instead dying in the pit of doom itself, terrified that she was dooming the Dragon Reborn with her mistakes.
Yep.
Boys, as much complaining as we've done about Alana before this, that is not the way I'd have chosen for her to go.
Right.
Yeah.
She needed
So a sip.
correction, not death.
A sip for Alana. And now it gets harder. Dira and Davrin Bashir, killed in the Battle of Merrilor as ordinary soldiers. A drink for them.
Yeah.
The double D.
Swan Sanche, former Amerlin, fearless leader and trainer of Egwene Elvir, killed in an explosion protecting Matt as the Sharran forces assaulted his command tent. And as I mentioned earlier, it just occurred to me writing that down. I can't believe it never occurred to me. Very similar manner to the story she once told Matt about her own uncle. Rest in the light, Swan Sanche.
Yes.
Gawain Trakand, perhaps the most complained about character on our episodes, with the possible exception of Egwene, died of his wounds after attempting to kill Demon Dread physically. A drink to Gawain.
Good effort, buddy, but, you know.
Yeah. His heart was
Wheel
there.
leaves,
It wasn't in the right spot, but it was there.
and you were on
Brigitte.
the wheel as it ground into the ground.
Brigitte Silverbow, Brigitte Trehelion, who died doing her duty in protecting Elaine from a surprise Dark Friend assault. She's technically alive again by the end of our story, but as a character, she died, and she's finished. Well fought, Brigitte. Enjoy your new life. Guidel is waiting. Drink for her.
No,
Down
it's
the one hole
over.
there. Oh, come on. Don't get me started on that again. Egwene Elvir.
Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, Egwene Elvir. Innkeeper's daughter from the Two
Ding-dong, witch
Rivers.
is dead.
Youngest Amerlin
Sorry,
seat of
Brought
all
that up on our
time.
last episode.
killed in a suicidal but successful attack on Mazrim Taim, as well as the entire army of Sharan channelers. Probably, I don't want to admit this, but probably the most badass death in the series that I can think of. Rest in the light, Egwene.
Cheers.
A drink that I know half of our listeners are waiting for, grudgingly. A drink for Bella, who was the most overhyped character of all time until, perhaps, Sanderson's stick. We'll get to that in the future. Yep. An often...
I think that speaks volumes.
Yep, that speaks everything. An often downplayed death, and one that bums me out in particular. I don't know why. The death of the nameless servant after the Battle of Marilor is won. Killed by Moghedien, needing to take a disguise. Yep. Can you imagine this, gentlemen? Can you imagine walking the field of victory with green things sprouting in the valley and people drinking and singing with praise, and fucking Moghedien corners you and slits your throat? What a bummer, for real.
Yeah.
No.
That guy's gonna come back as like some incredibly rich, fun-loving, partying guy, you know, who just gets to...
There's a guy who was a girl.
Cakewalk through life.
Moghedien needed a disguise. It was a woman.
It was a woman. Oh, a woman. Oh, well, same goes.
Yeah, same goes. Yeah. And our last drink, I'm going to finish this whiskey off on the... Well, I'm not going to finish it. One more sip. There's more left than I thought there was. Another moment that I predicted correctly. No, I went on to my last note there. We already said that. Randall Thor, who I understand isn't technically dead either. But to me, he gets the same treatment as Brigitte. Their life as that person is over, and they are leaving loved ones behind. If anyone in this series has earned the honor of a drink, obviously, it was Randall Thor. I won't say rest in the light, since you aren't dead. But I will say rest. You have earned it.
May the dragon finally alight so he can get some fucking sleep.
Randall Thor needs to sleep in. That's what he needs.
Yeah, that's right. I need a nap after all that.
And that is the end of what I consider to be the notable deaths. There are plenty more, but those are the notable ones that I wanted to bring up for today. Mm-hmm. Whew! All right, that segment is over, and man, my stomach is having a time. All right.
Well, let's move into the final draft.
Oh, okay. All right, let's do this. I'll bring up the bottle here, and I'll start us off. For today, I went for an Irish whiskey. I originally said I was going to be featuring something I had featured before, something that I reserved for special occasions. My God, I am slurring my words after that. Instead, though, I found another Irish whiskey pretty close to it on the shelves that had a name that made me go, you know what? This is better. For the ending of the Wheel of Time, this is better. When we're talking about the ending of the greatest fantasy epic of our time, and I had originally planned to have a whole, speech about Jordan and how he's influenced my life, but I realized we've already done a lot of that in Knife of Dreams, the last book he ever technically wrote. So I'm just going to tell you what I brought today. This is a Irish whiskey, let's see, Walsh whiskey, believe it or not. It definitely has a very, very strong Scotch kind of flavor to it. It says unique fatting, single pot still, and single malt Irish whiskey, triple distilled for extra smoothness. Aged in flame-charred bourbon barrels, distilled entirely of barley in traditional Irish copper pots. This here is called Writer's Tears.
I know that whiskey.
I figured it was only appropriate for the end of the Wheel of Time. Because all of us, having been writers of whatever we want to write, have been inspired in one way or another by the man that was Robert Jordan, and continue to be inspired going forward by the man that is Brandon Sanderson. So what we have here is Writer's Tears, and it was very, very smooth, very delicious, a very interesting Scotch-like burp, if you want to call it that. It lingers for a few hours, and that's what I was sipping on during our previous segment. One sip at a time, mixed with a lot of water. Still wasn't quite enough. I had to take a break there. But all in all, I highly recommend that Irish whiskey. It's very nice. A little on the expensive side here in Canada. It's $50 for a 26er. So it's a decent chunk of change for a whiskey.
Worth it for
it's worth it for this episode.
The end of the Wheel of Time.
Yes. So
Yeah,
what are you guys drinking?
Of course. I'm just drinking some Mike's Hard Lemonade Black Cherry. You know, it's a drink that I've had for a while. It's bitter. It's sweet. It certainly gets the job done. I've had so many fond memories with it.
I have some particularly not fond memories with Mike's Hard. Oh, man.
Mike's way harder than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Mike was too hard for 17-year-old Rob. Let's put it that way.
Well, you know, it's a comforting thing to revisit. So, there you have it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Don't be afraid not to get too fancy, listeners.
Drew McCaffrey, you have been
here
sitting
we go.
on this
Here
one
we go.
for a long time, my friend. You have been telling me again and again how excited you are to talk about this one. Let's hear it. What do you got, Drew?
So today, I am drinking a beer from Anchorage Brewing Company in Alaska.
Again from Anchorage, okay.
This is a blend of their insane barley wine. They make what is quite possibly the best barley wine in the world. It's called A Deal with the Devil. They've released a few variants of it. You know, they have a double oaked version and a triple oaked version. These are like the double oaked. I have a can of the double oaked A Deal with the Devil at home right now. One can. If I wanted to, which I do not want to, I could sell it on the secondary market for about $220. One can of beer.
Like
These guys are kings of the barley wine game. And they blended it with their also very highly rated Imperial Stout. And then aged it 18 months in Woodford Reserve double oaked bourbon barrels. It is, this is an insane beer. It's 15.5% alcohol by volume.
Oh my god! And you were sipping that when I was doing my segment?
No, I was sipping a separate beer. I've been drinking this one over the course of the episode.
Okay.
But this thing is just all kinds of like sweet dark fruit, oak, bourbon. You got that like the expected barley wine flavor profile, you know, the kind of like toffee and raisiny sort of thing, and it finishes with that roasty stout. It is extraordinary. This beer is so freaking good. I'm over the moon that I've gotten to drink this. But more importantly, the name.
I thought you already said
this
the name.
This beer is called...
Hold on, isn't it called...
Endless Ending.
Oh my god. That's it. That wraps up our coverage of the Wheel of Time there, ladies and gentlemen. Drew McCaffrey has done it. He has given us a reason to just say, alright, we're done. We're done here. Endless Endings. I could have sworn you said it was called Deal with the Devil.
So it's a blend of A Deal with the Devil and their Imperial Stout.
Got you. Okay, because I thought even in itself, Deal with the Devil is perfect for, you know, Rand's whole thing with the Dark One, even though technically that would have been covered in part 2 of Memory of Light instead of part 3.
What Rand did was be like, hey, you want to make a deal? And then as the Dark One reaches out his hand, he goes, psych!
Puts his hand over his hair just like he did there.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm ever going to top this beer on the podcast. I'll do my best. I do have a really good one for next week. And
so
we'll
what are we
get
covering
to
next
what
week?
we're covering. But if this is the end of our Wheel of Time coverage for now, we'll eventually do New Spring. We'll probably do River of Souls and A Fire Within the Ways at some point. But this is the end of our coverage of the main series. So just a moment of silence.
Yeah. And you know what, gentlemen?
This has
I think we have...
been episode 65.
I believe it's 65, yes.
Of the
I'm
Inking
like
Out Loud podcast.
99%.
Next up, we are covering Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett, the sequel to Foundry Side, which we covered last year. You can check those episodes out. We did those just before we started the Wheel of Time, actually, so we have a nice little bookend.
Yeah,
going.
It was episodes 25 and 26, right before 27, which started the Wheel of Time.
A bookend with 4.2 million words in between.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, we also did Warrior of the Altai and Starsight and some odds and ends in between.
So, check us out on Patreon if you want early access to that. We will also be doing a Patreon exclusive episode on Fire Within the Ways, which is the deleted Perrin sequence from A Memory of Light. That should be that'll be up on Patreon by the time this episode is out. So if you want to get access to that, check us out there. As always, I'm your host, Drew McCaffrey. With me, co-host Rob Santos.
Right here.
And our special guest and sound engineer, Patrick McCaffrey.
It's been an
Thanks,
honor.
Pat. It's been an honor having you, my man. Thank you.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm just saying.
No, I know, but it's been. I appreciate you, Pat. I appreciate you so much, Drew. We're here.
Like I'm saying this as if the podcast is going to end, but it's not ending.
It's
I mean,
no,
we have
but in
so
a large
much more to
part, like
go.
I said
It
at
is-
the very
It is
It
beginning.
is an ending.
at the very beginning of our Wheel of Time coverage, I said the Wheel of Time is the main reason that this podcast exists. Because I would
much
never have
is.
met Drew McCaffrey if it hadn't.
Yeah.
So in a way, it does feel appropriate. It's an ending. It does feel appropriate to make this a big final send off. Looking at the timestamps, it looks like we have now officially broken our record again for the longest episode on Inking Out Loud yet by a few minutes.
Yeah, I think so.
33 episodes we spent talking about Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. 33. Not counting the Warrior of the Altai, which is also Robert Jordan. Not counting the casting episodes for the patrons. So it's been one hell of a journey. So thank you, gentlemen, for discussing this with me.
Yeah.
And thank you all for
So-
listening. Everybody who's listening, thank you so much.
Seriously, thanks
Cheers.
for joining us on this journey. Cheers.
I'll have a drink to
Wow.
that.
Yeah. It's been a time, and hope you guys all stick around. We have plenty of fun fantasy and science fiction coming up.
I hope you like
we
Brandon
said,
Sanderson.
We're doing Shorefall next. We got The Black Company coming up. We got Mistborn. We got Stormlight. We got Dune. We got all kinds of great stuff on the schedule for the rest of this year and into the future. So, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Deuces.